Well, thanks so much, Neil, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. It's great to be in the Leaders' Lounge. They initially wanted me to stand on this stage, but unfortunately the stage is about 6 foot tall and I'm about 6'3" tall, so that wasn't going to work. So instead I'm going to lounge with you on this chair. And I'm gonna try and just give you a bit of a run through, I suppose, from a fairly high-level perspective, the Microsoft perspective on what has just turned out to be a pretty exceptional year. And of course, as we sit here in this tremendous environment, seeing all you good people and all the other 4,000 people here, we realize this really is a moment. So that's why we're calling 2023 the inflection point in terms of AI, really the point at which this technology, which people have been talking about for some time, really starts to manifest itself in terms of what it can do. And, you know, we all had this moment, I guess, about 6 months ago where we were sort of, oh my gosh, you know, look what this can do. And people were, you know, getting it to write poems and, you know, discovering all of these tremendously exciting uses that the generative AI in particular could be used for. And then the conversation moved on a little bit and developed, and people started saying, oh, actually, oh my God, look at what this could do as well. And, you know, there's been in a pretty short space of time, the conversation about the tremendous potential of the technology, but then also, of course, the risks and the points that we need to kind of mitigate potentially as we look forward to it. So I'm going to try and avoid being, you know, Panglossian and only talking about the positive uses and potential uses of the technology. I'm also just at the start going to talk a little bit about this very important job that we need to do in parallel with innovation, which is responsible development and deployment as well. So, of course, you'll all know by now, having been at this conference, that we're talking about a technology that can do all of these things. In particular, it's the perception of images and words and the learning and the reasoning from the inputs that the technology takes. And then perhaps for me, this interaction point that you can interact just using natural language. This has been the huge step forward that we've seen. From Microsoft's perspective, this has been made possible through a long-standing partnership that we've had with OpenAI. We did make a significant investment in OpenAI back at the start of 2023, and really they're our partners in doing all of these things that we're going to talk about here. So what can these services do? A lot of this will be familiar to you, I'm sure. The chatbots, of course, are the things that have caught everyone's imagination. We then built this into search using our Bing search site. And at the same time, it's the generative point that is really the game changer, that we've got a technology that can actually create in real time both words and text, but also images. And so when we start to think about how those incredible aspects of the technology could manifest themselves in real developed and detailed use cases, and you probably can't read this slide, so I'll pick out a couple of them, it's really very, very broadly applicable. And that's one of the reasons why it is so exciting. We've got the gamut of uses here on the screen running from healthcare, and I think any technology that may make it easier for us to diagnose and treat cancer, you know, that has to grab your attention and your imagination. Through education, social justice, some of the more sort of industrial uses as well around material science, agriculture, where we're particularly seeing optimization of techniques and technologies becoming possible. And of course, not to lose sight of the fact that this could be a tremendously creative tool as well. And what we always talk about when we're talking about how this technology can be used is we talk about it as a co-pilot that can be assistive. And so, for example, on creative expression, when I talk about the fact that you can generate poems using this technology, I am pretty confident that creative writers will continue to creatively write, but these tools can be assistive in these creative endeavors, as well as helping you with productivity and more kind of commercial applications. Now, alongside the journey of the technology itself, we've been on a journey of developing a responsible approach. As I said before, it has to come in tandem, the innovation and also the responsible approach. And we've been talking about this responsible AI journey since 2016, when Satya Nadella, who's our CEO, first published an article on the subject in Slate. And as you move forward up the timetable that you've got on the screen there, we talk about having adopted some principles. We've actually created principles around facial recognition in particular back in 2018. And then we established an office within the company on responsible AI that developed our responsible AI standard, which is published and which is what we are using as we develop our own tools and as our partners and customers do as well. So the three kind of central tenets of our approach is that we believe that AI should be built and used responsibly and ethically, that it can and should advance international competitiveness and national security, and crucially, that it must serve society broadly, not narrowly. And those are expounded, those three tenets are expounded in more detail in the principles that I referred to, which are published and which you can see. And those are not a standalone document that we publish and then we leave to one side. This is really embedded in the ecosystem within the company, all the way up to the board. We have our research teams, our policy teams, and our engineering teams using those principles under the direction of the Office of Responsible AI, which in turn reports through the executive leadership to the board. So this is really at the heart of the company. So then I'll start to talk a little bit about the technology. And of course, the last 6-12 months, it's really felt like the technology has advanced exponentially, but we've been on a journey for longer than the last period of time, and it's back in 2016 that we saw some steps moving forward on vision. You can see speech recognition, following, reading, and translation, getting us all the way up to the point now that we're getting to something which is approaching parity with human cognition and reasoning. So let me just start to talk about some of the use cases. And this is where I think you'll probably be interested in some of the specific examples. Before I do, I'm going to talk about the ways in which the technology can be used as a tool. And of course, every technology, going back to the first time that a Neanderthal picked up a stick, every technology can be used as a tool, but it can also be used as a weapon. And this is an idea that we have so centrally to our way of working and thinking in the company that Brad Smith, our president and vice chair, actually entitled his book of a few years ago, Tools and Weapons. So, AI for Good is the title of the conference that we're at. Let me break it down for you in 5 areas for us as a company and give you a few specifics. First of all, we've got a program called AI for Earth. This is a commitment that we have made to provide $50 million over 5 years to try and support endeavors and work and new breakthroughs that can focus on agriculture, biodiversity, climate change, and water. We have, as a company, a set of commitments to our environmental sustainability, and we believe that AI can be a big part of solving that for ourselves, but also more broadly for the Earth. One of the ways in which we do this, for example, is with the example of glacier mapping. Now, if you've seen some of the presentations earlier, I caught the start of the presentation from Planet earlier on the main stage, a satellite imagery firm that we actually partner with ourselves. We see that the quantity of data that we have that is mapping the detail of topography of the world's surface, it is enormous. And as the Chief Impact Officer of Planet said, we don't have a data desert, we actually have a data deluge. And actually one of the challenges that you have is really making sense of this data. And of course, that's where the machine learning and data analytic capability comes in. So to give an example of what you can do with this, we've got this glacier mapping example. And so we take the satellite imagery, going back over time, the last few years, I think back to 2018, and you're running a huge quantity of essentially mapping data through the AI model, and we've trained a machine learning-based approach which can then pick out and identify where the glaciers are. So instead of laboriously going through and drawing a line around the glacier on the map, that's what the model does for us. In doing that, we can actually then, of course, support the ecological monitoring of the glaciers, and sadly, I suppose at the moment, watch them retreat. But at least we will understand the issue that we're facing there. Moving on to the second area, AI for accessibility. It's a $25 million commitment. Really, that accessibility is something that we interpret very broadly in terms of helping people with disabilities focus on their daily life as well as their employment and use of our tools. And this is a tremendous example, which I actually wish I had the video to show you, but it's an example of how this technology can really come to life in people's everyday lives through the smartphone that they have in their hand. The backstory of this is that there was an engineer who back in 2016 realized that his grandfather was starting to lose his sight to the point that he actually could no longer recognize him when he was talking to him on Skype. And he realized that there was the potential to use AI and the image recognition capability of AI to effectively provide a voice translation of what the camera is seeing as you go around your daily life. So with this technology, and there's an app that you can download on your phone, you point your phone in the place that you're looking, and it will give you an audio feedback on actually what is being seen. So Seeing AI is designed for the blind and the low vision community. And it's a free app. It's something that's worth having a little bit more of a look at. I haven't got time right now. Let me turn to health more broadly. We've said that we're going to invest $40 million over 5 years on the area of health. And this is another example of where that image recognition capability of the technology can really start to move things forward. And once again, taking advantage of that portable computing capability in the smartphone as well as the link back to the cloud. I think people often think that leprosy is something that existed in the Bible but is now gone. But of course, that's not true. You've got 200,000 people diagnosed every year with this disease that can be tremendously debilitating. And one of the problems is, as with so many of these diseases, late diagnosis makes it much, much harder to treat. So by making the diagnostic process quicker, more accessible, in developing countries, the Global South, where that access to primary healthcare can be harder, this is something that we think can really move the dial on treatment of that disease. Humanitarian action would be the fourth area I talk about. I think we've seen a lot in the last few years, obviously, in terms of the challenges being faced with disaster response, but also the refugee crisis that we see manifesting itself around the world. And so much of what we are trying to do here is sometimes about using facial recognition to help reunite people who've been separated in refugee crises. But we've also, once again, used this satellite imagery technology to be able to actually do something like a damage assessment of be it natural disasters or even man-made disasters around the world. And once you can start to map the way that the damage has been visited on an area, and you can actually translate that onto the population data that we have as well, you can start to get a sense of how serious a crisis is and how you might respond to it in something like a real-time approach. And this is something that we're very proud to work with the Red Cross and the UN and others in this sort of work. And finally, and the last thing I'll talk about is our AI for cultural heritage. And I have to say that this slide was included because my colleague Hector is from France, and he particularly likes the picture of Mont Saint-Michel, which you'll recognize there being recreated. What we've been able to show with this technology, and we did this with several sites in Greece as well, is that you can actually preserve some aspects of cultural heritage through the creation of this very detailed digital model that can then actually be viewed as well through a sort of VR technology as well. The AI element of this is the mapping in the first instance. So actually taking very, very detailed photographs and images of a site means that you can then preserve the detail of that site, model it through an AI approach, and then it can be accessible for the future, even if, sadly, damage were to be caused to the site itself. So that is a quick run through both the approach we're taking to responsibility, but also some of the examples of what we're discovering this tremendous technology can do. And I see that my time has run out, Neil, so I don't know what you want me to do now.
Well, I think you shared a lot of great examples, Chris. If people are interested in learning more about what Microsoft's doing, what's the best way for them to actually do that?
Okay, so look, we've got a lot of this material, obviously, as you might imagine, accessible on our website, and you'll find contact details there as well. In addition, you've got my name and you've got my details, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. I think one of the main things that we're focused on is always trying to identify and build new partnerships. So if you've got ideas for how some of this technology might be really deployed in a way that can be good and beneficial, that's what I'm interested in hearing about.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.